Afternoon, folks. I wanted to spend just a minute or two today going over some of the responses I got off of this last part of the blockchain deal. I am kind of grinning because one of your classmates turned in a recommendation to watch a YouTube video that actually fits so well into what we were talking about. It cracked me up so much watching it, and I'll probably share that with you folks today, and hopefully it comes across the screen. Just one quick bit of housekeeping. I have a field trip Thursday I'm doing with the Ag Science 199 class, so I won't have class Thursday. We'll meet one last time next Tuesday, and that will be it for the class. So back on task today about this blockchain stuff, there was a couple of responses that came in that were just nothing short of incredible, if you ask me. I'm kind of excited to actually get around to a couple of them. This student right here did an excellent job. If we get right into it with question one there, do you think would happen if two authorized or accepted users, so people who could go ahead and manipulate data or add blocks to the blockchain, what happens if they couldn't agree on what a transaction was or an action or a management item, something that all of you have said is important information to have on the blockchain, and everybody who came in with an answer about what is a block on the blockchain, your answer was correct. A blockchain is whatever the users decide it's going to be. But the question I was really dancing around, and I think I had one student that got pretty deadly close to the biggest problem with blockchain technology if we're using it on a large scale. I'll get around to that. Sorry, I'm skipping around a little bit, but please understand as we go through these answers, some of you are envisioning blockchains like we had one student last time that said, okay, Walmart and Safeway or Kroger, whoever it was, have created a blockchain basically so they can have traceability on whatever type of produce it is we're talking about. So a very small user base there. The blockchain may be absolutely enormous, but the user base is pretty small. Also, there's not two different business entities or two different entities with divergent goals associated. So my comparison there is Safeway set up a blockchain so they could track lettuce. Cool, we understand that. So everybody's actually rowing in exactly the same boat. What I'm getting at is, what if let's take the Bitcoin blockchain, for example. What if one user said, I agreed to pay you this much Bitcoin, and another one said, no, you said you were going to pay this much, or the terms of payment were X, Y, or Z, and we have a disagreement there. So we have two users that have divergent goals there, and really I'm asking in this first question is, what happens if one of them is either withholding information, not agreeing to something that did in fact happen, or the other one that we can't deny is somebody's going ahead and providing false data, and what's going to happen there. So this student says, we might need to bring in a third party. Unfortunately, and there you have another classmate that identified this problem, a lot of times that means the government's entering into this. So some of you might have heard that and said, okay, yeah, the government's a good third-party arbiter. Other people are saying the government can't tie their own shoes or find their butt with 3 tries. So we've got a little bit of a divergent attitude there. So basically, there's a term that was kind of in common with a lot of you folks that answered it. It's going to make a hole in the data. We're going to have an incomplete chain there. So yeah, there's the answer to that one. So this next question was actually kind of generated off of what a lot of you folks responded in the first part of this assignment. The student says, I think there would be a risk to the blockchain because there are too many biased people out there in the public. I don't think that's a comment that really anybody can deny. There are plenty of folks who might be viewing this data, and this is a theme that came up a couple of times as you folks answered, and I think you hit the nail on the head, that somebody may have a bad attitude about whatever it is you're going on about doing, and they're going to use the data that they find or they view within that blockchain for reasons that you had never intended, and attaching meanings or context that certainly is incorrect, and you have zero control over that. I mean, I can go to really kind of silly or nonsensical examples about, celebrity breakup that happens over Twitter, and how the entire issue gets taken out of the context that it happened in. I guess the big one would be Johnny Depp and Amber Heard right now. There are so many accusations flying back and forth in that deal that a normal person that was starting from today would never be able to catch up, because all of the information that they're getting has been tainted or run through somebody else's biased grinder, and that information is no good. The exact opposite can be said true of these blockchains. If they're supposed to just be factual data, and you remove that from the context of how that data was reported, it can certainly be used as a stick to beat on you with. So here's one that also is not deniable. There may actually be a technology barrier for some of the folks in our industries, be it because of age or owned technology, however you want to call it. Also use of that technology. That, if you take this comment one step further, and you said, this student says, yeah, there's some old farmers out there that they're not going to change nothing. They haven't changed in 30 years, and what's going to cause them to today? That's absolutely correct. But if there was some sort of a mandate to be putting data on this blockchain, then you're almost in a position where you're relying on, yet again, another third party to be adding that data. So that's a little bit problematic right there. Let me find another one that, wow, this one was pretty cool right here. It's very hard to make a complete blockchain, again, in reference to what happens if two of the users aren't agreeing about some data that should be put on it. Yeah, it's hard to make a complete blockchain if not everybody's on the same page. And I guess we can't add information if it isn't verified by another user. What will happen? So she goes ahead and says, yeah, probably the blockchain's going to be broken. We've got a little bit of a problem, and I'm getting around to, I think one student put her finger on it really, really closely as to what the major problem is. Up to this point, all of you students have responded to this as if everybody has bought into this and think that this blockchain technology is a great thing, and what they can benefit from it is a good thing. You're going to hear from me today. I don't know that that's going to be the case always. And we've got some good examples coming up on that one. I think this was another great comment right here. If we take it back to using this blockchain as a means of understanding for all of our customers out there. So this student consumers think they want to know how their food got on their table. It's pretty easy to walk down the produce aisle in the grocery store and you walk by the local section or you walk by the organic section, and it's pretty easy to twist that around in somebody's mind, and they thought about buying organic because they have this perception that it's healthier for them and their family, or they thought about buying local produce because they're feeling pressure to take strain off of using resources. But then again, are they actually doing it? Or the other thing is yeah, they might buy that head of lettuce that was grown by a local farmer this time, but next time they walk in the grocery store, are they going to buy the pre-made bag of lettuce because that's what they've got time for today? Yet they're hanging on it. No, I buy the local lettuce. When in reality, it's probably not as black or white as a lot of our consumers want to make it out to be. And the other thing is I guess a consumer's attitude is very, very different according to how hungry they are and how much money they have in their pocket as to how important some of this data might be to them. So I think this comment about consumers think they want to know until they're not able to make the choice that they'd like to be able to make. What are they going to do then? And do they really want to know the story beyond what their idealized, their, what they think of the best is? So that's, but she does go on to say, I think it's great, especially for the folks that are just genuinely interested and or concerned about what's going on with their food. This blockchain technology offers maybe a more meaningful way to get that story out, and doing it in an extreme fact-based manner rather than relying on my producer group to put something positive out on Twitter. I hope that rings a little bit true, even a little bit. So yeah, she also makes the point, there's a lot of things that go into getting food on our table. And rarely is it as simple as, yeah, I went and bought Walla Walla sweets at the grocery store. Those are local onions. I feel good about what I did. For everything else, there's a whole pile that goes into it. And, I mean, for goodness sake, if you bought a Reese's microwave burrito or a Hot Pocket, understanding where all of those ingredients came from that went into making that and where it came from, that's going to be a pretty extensive list. So supply chain management. So this student is definitely coming from an ag service sector. So I guess the example would be somebody like a McGregor or a local co-op, something like that. So the list of places that they get supplies from, who they do business with, where all of this stuff is located, the freight involved, the people involved, the expertise involved. That list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and more and more and more complex. And also, she's referring to the fact that sometimes it's not as clean and simple as everybody wants it to be. I think maybe a low-hanging fruit example right now is there's a lot of wheat farmers that are hiring a lot of helicopters and airplanes this year to keep rust under control. If they don't, they lose their crop. However, I can understand an individual's farmer's hesitancy to supply all of that data into a blockchain, especially if they feel like they're taking a lot of really hard or maybe even unfair questions about how much pesticide they apply to their crop. In the context of a blockchain, it's very, very difficult to explain that, look, if I didn't apply this pesticide, the crop would have been zero, and that's just not an option. So Very well done. Thank you. Okay, I thought this student had some pretty interesting answers. So personally, again, on the first question, I think there might be a hole in the transaction that wouldn't go through, and it wouldn't take place, at least on the blockchain, until the issue is resolved. Right, and the data isn't real until it's been accepted by the users, and therefore we have a hole in the chain. So again, I think that's a pretty clear-cut answer right there. This, I thought, was maybe one of the most interesting things I saw from anybody. So explain what you think there is, or what risk you perceive if the general public were able to view, if not even, maybe they can't even participate, but they can see what's going on in your blockchain. So she says, I think that there would be money going in all different accounts, and also the money being stolen. So I am nowhere near master enough about this to even begin to think up about how I could steal money within a blockchain. But I mean, to her point, there's certainly been people that are stealing Bitcoin. There's zero doubt about that. If not a private account, anyone is around with a cryptocurrency account, right? So we're talking about money. Also, there might be a big deal because anyone is allowed within the accounts, and money's money. Therefore, it might be okay for the general public to view it. That's almost like the more eyes on something, the more honest everybody's going to be. So that was pretty interesting. Some of the barriers. She says one of the barriers is that there's no security for these chains being linked, and which allows then for no privacy within those accounts. I think that's actually one of the biggest deals about blockchain technology, and if I'm reading into this right and understand where the student's coming from a little bit, that's one of the age-old arguments that we're going to have to deal with. So I'd like to put this example out in front of you. Let's say that you're Tyson Foods, and this student right here has a pen of cattle on feed at XYZ feed yard. It doesn't matter what feed yard. But let's say there is a beef blockchain in place right here. And I'll just give you another hypothetical there. Let's say this student has a pen of cattle, and they are really smoking good cattle. I mean, these cattle gained weight like no other. So we've got that data coming in on that part of the blockchain from that accepted user. We've got data coming in from her about where, when, and what those cattle were when they were born. Also, a whole bunch of information about what kind of management practices went into these cattle. And we've got these cattle individually identified. We know down to, and getting back, thinking about that YouTube video we're going to watch here in a second, we even know that calf's name. So we have all of this data about it. And today's actually a pretty good example. Tyson Foods finds itself in a market where it's able to sell beef. So this is actual meat now. And also let me be, this blatant about it. Tyson Foods is in the job of converting a live steer into a sellable product to a grocery store or a restaurant. So they are into converting cows with moo and hooves and all the stuff that comes with it into a steak that I can put a for sale sign on. And absolutely anybody in the world is interested in buying that. Whereas there's a very, very, very small portion of the population that's interested in buying anything that still has moo associated with it. So Tyson today is able to sell meat for a lot of money. There's also huge demand out there for it. I guess that's part of they're selling it for a lot of money. They're also on an appreciating value market. The price of, you've all heard, the price of groceries is going up, and actually what's leading that charge is meat and dairy. So they're actually able to, in the short amount of time that they own that animal, they're appreciating more value due to all this inflation we've got going on and consistently rising demand, all that good stuff. So Tyson's sitting in the driver's seat today. So this student has a pen of cattle for sale, and they're really good cattle. They're going to perform, and they are absolutely going to provide to the market what the market is asking for. I think one of the big things she's getting at when she says this is, what incentive does Tyson Foods have if they really need live cattle walking in the back door of their packing plant, and they had to step out and pay a bunch of money to get a hold of those cattle, because even though there's not very many packers, what few beef packers there are all want those cattle. They need those cattle. They would really like to sell that beef. What incentive does Tyson have to be honest about how much she paid for this student, how much Tyson paid for this student's cattle, especially if they paid way more than what everybody or source of information on the market is saying is actually what happens? I'm going to submit to you that Tyson Foods has zero incentive to verify a transaction that Harley puts up on the blockchain. She says, yeah, Tyson bought cattle from me for $1.80, or $1.80 a pound live, whereas all the market news out there says cattle are trading, $1.38, something like that today. And it's probably not off the mark. If that set of cattle performs like I said they would, they're that good with all the incentives, bonuses, and premiums built into this deal. Tyson probably did pay that much for her cattle. The issue is now Tyson doesn't want to pay that much for every set of cattle out there. They might have paid it for this set, but not the others. So it's pretty easy to walk into that trap and say, well, yeah, that big, huge firm ought to pay everybody the same. They ought to be fair. Let's spin that on its head. What if it was you buying a used rig or a pickup, and you went and did a really good job beating up on whoever had that for sale, and you got a smoking hot deal on something that you needed or wanted? You don't necessarily want everybody rifling through your underwear drawer and seeing exactly what's going on in your private life. I think that's a huge part of the comment that this student's making right there, is that privacy is a pretty big deal to a lot of people, and the reasons for wanting that privacy are many, and it's not fair for us to comment on how somebody else ought to conduct their business. That's a little bit of a problem with this whole blockchain deal, especially if we're talking about the economy-wide ones, not necessarily the example that we've been given about Safeway set up a blockchain for traceability. Okay, so I thought that was pretty cool. All right, here we go. So this student says, I don't think it's necessarily going to create a hole. And if you read on, I think what this student was saying is that there's going to be enough people participating in the blockchain that if you have one knothead out there, there's going to be others backfilling the data. That may certainly be true. And I would hope so if we're driving at this perfect delivery of information. And she's also coming at the example of, these smaller or very specifically designed blockchains. It's probably not going to go that way. Everybody has the same goal in mind. Okay. I love this. So go ahead and read through this a little bit. She's basically calling out that there are groups of consumers or our customers out there who want to know every detail surrounding their food. And this student thinks we ought to go ahead and hand it to them. probably there, no doubt about it. That is a very transparent attitude. That is a very honest attitude, and it doesn't necessarily negate one production model versus another. It's absolute honesty. I mean, it's complete candor, which I don't think anybody can argue is very wrong with that. However, to her point, there are some people that can take it just a little bit too far. So this is worth the time to watch. So just hang with me for a second here. Sorry, you're going to have to watch my ads for a second.
My 7-year-old son Daniel was shocked to death.
Taking care of you today. If you have any questions about the menu, please let me know. I guess I do have a question about the chicken. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it? The chicken is a heritage breed, woodland-raised chicken that's been fed a diet of sheepskin, soy, and hazelnuts.
Yeah, this is local.
Yes, so
Why does she just want to? It's local.
it is. Is that USDA organic or Oregon organic or Portland organic? It's just all across the board organic.
Hazelnuts was a local.
It was the area where the chickens were in the room.
I'm sorry, that's hard to have it exactly.
4 acres. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. Okay. You're doing the right thing.
Not too hard yet.
Why?
I drove way too slow here today. I'm so weird at that gas pedal. I can just move the whole vehicle forward.
Right, so here is the chicken you'll be enjoying tonight.
You have this information. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. His name was Colin. Here are his papers, okay?
He looks like a happy little guy who runs around. A lot of friends, other chickens as friends. Putting his little wing around another one and kind of like palling around.
I don't know that I can speak to that level of intimate knowledge about him. They do a lot to make sure that their chickens are very happy. When you say they,
Okay, I'm going to make sure everybody has that link at the end, but I'm not quite so sure I had it on so you could hear it. But anyways, I'll make sure you got that link, and I'll put that up in the announcement just so you guys can actually watch it. It's pretty comical. Anyways, some of the other answers that were pretty good here is don't think that the blockchain is a perfect tool. There are limits in terms of the size and frequency. So what she's saying on this is that it's entirely possible to bury this deal in data. I think that's a very real risk. And also, I'm sure you folks have heard a turn of phrase, something like data does not equate to information. We can absolutely bury this deal with kind of meaningless stuff that our consumers don't necessarily care about and isn't important to anybody. So, again, very well done there. There was a couple interesting answers from this student. I think if there was a problem within the blockchain, the disagreement would need to either be evaluated from another point of view or sit down and reevaluate the data sources. Oh boy, we got an issue there. Our world is rife with people who get on TV right now or put a YouTube video out or have a TikTok video or something. They're certainly going to present themselves as the world's foremost expert on something, but they may be an idiot just the same as you and me. There you go. In fact, I took a group of students last week and we listened to somebody speak at a grazing conference, and I'm pretty sure that this speaker got paid a whole lot of money to basically say, go to my website and buy my products, and just zero scientific reference to what she was doing. So there you go on that. I also kind of appreciate this. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but that doesn't mean that everyone needs to have the opportunity to see the way people privately run their operation or the financial parts of somebody else's business. I'm pretty sure when we're pointing a transparency finger somewhere other than ourselves, we're all kind of for it. But I got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit taken aback or a little bit offended if somebody walks up to me and says, "Oh yeah, how many cows do you got?" That's exactly the same thing as saying, "Hey, would you open your wallet and I want to see how much money you have in there." Not everybody's going to be perfectly willing to share that information, and that is the thing about these blockchains. It's pretty much going to rummage through everybody's underwear drawer. The student says there's only, in reference to this last question about, she says there's only a few people that are actually going to benefit from the blockchain, and even fewer that, financially are going to benefit from it. I think that's a very real risk, and that's probably going to be one of the biggest barriers to seeing blockchain technology used to its fullest within agriculture. So she comes back and again references the older farmers and ranchers. Just a quick point of reference, the average age of anybody in agriculture in our country right now is 68 years old. That's pretty harsh. So there you go. It's going to be a hard transition, and there's going to be problems that come with it. So again, folks, I plucked a couple of your answers out. Please don't be offended if I didn't use yours, but I thought there was a couple that were particularly well done. And again, thank you, folks. And I will make sure everybody has a link to that Portlandia video. Thank you.